Dad's lawyer read the will. Everything goes to your sister. She smiled triumphantly, but when she discovered what Mom secretly left me before she died, her smile vanished. The mahogany-paneled office felt smaller with each measured, deliberate word Mr. Caldwell read from my father's will, the weight of finality pressing down on me, stealing the air from my lungs. I remained still, hands folded in my lap, while Jessica's smirk widened, reflecting the sunlight from the window. It caught the diamonds on her bracelet, the one Dad had gifted her last year, another glittering reminder of his unwavering favoritism. At 32, I was witnessing the final act of my father's life, his ultimate choice of her over me, just as I had always expected. My chest felt hollow, a dull ache that had become a familiar companion over the years. The properties at 1542, Pine Grove Avenue, 789, Lakeview Drive, and the summer home in Newport, all to Jessica Morgan Pierce. Mr. Caldwell continued, adjusting his glasses, his voice a drone against the silence. The family business, Morgan Communications, including all assets and subsidiaries, to Jessica Morgan Pierce. Jessica leaned back in her chair, practically glowing, her eyes bright with triumph. She had dressed for the occasion, of course, a sleek black designer dress, perfectly manicured nails, hair styled with precision. She was everything my father valued, ambitious, obedient, married to the right man, mother to the right children. I, on the other hand, had disappointed him at every turn. A marine biologist instead of a corporate successor. Divorced the husband he handpicked when I refused to tolerate his affairs. I had built my own life, my own success, one that didn't fit into my father's narrow, rigid definition of achievement. Is that all? Jessica asked, her voice dripping with false sympathy, a syrupy sweetness that made my teeth ache. She turned to me with a practiced pout, her eyes darting, almost daring me to crack. Oh, Alexei, I'm so sorry. But you know how Dad felt about your choices. I met her gaze without flinching, a quiet storm brewing behind my eyes. I'm well aware, Jess. Mr. Caldwell cleared his throat, sensing the shift in the room's atmosphere. There is a small personal effects account set aside for Alexandra, containing family photographs and some jewelry from your grandmother. Jessica actually laughed, a short, sharp sound. Well, at least you got the family photos, Lexi. Not sure where you'll put them in that tiny apartment of yours. I stood, smoothing the fabric of my dress, my movements slow and deliberate, a calm belying the raging tempest within. Are we finished here, Mr. Caldwell? The lawyer nodded, visibly relieved I wasn't making a scene. He had probably seen enough inheritance battles to know they rarely ended cleanly, but I wasn't going to give Jessica the satisfaction of seeing me broken. This profound dynamic, where one child is overtly favored and the other systematically dismissed, is a classic example of parental triangulation and can have deep psychological ramifications. The black sheep often develops a strong sense of independence and resilience, but also carries the emotional burden of conditional love, constantly seeking validation that never truly comes from the parent. Meanwhile, the favored child, like Jessica, often internalizes the parent's values, becoming a proxy for their expectations and sometimes struggling with their own identity outside that rigid framework. The tension between us was not just about inheritance. It was the culmination of a lifetime of these unspoken, painful dynamics. Lexi, she called as I reached the door, her voice a triumphant sneer. Don't worry, I'll make sure you're taken care of. Maybe there's even a position for you at Morgan Communications. Something entry-level, of course. I turned, offering her a small, tight smile that didn't reach my eyes. That's generous, Jess. But I'll be just fine. The drive home was quiet, the trees lining the road tinged with gold and red, a stark beauty contrasting with the ugliness of the morning. Mom had loved this time of year. She would have hated what Dad had done today. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. Dinner night? We should talk about your future. I ignored it, Just as I had been ignoring her hollow gesture since Dad's funeral last week, the insincerity a bitter taste in my mouth. Instead, I parked in front of my tiny apartment, a charming craftsman house I had bought mortgage-free 3 years ago, a sanctuary I had built for myself. Inside, I went straight to my office, my footsteps echoing faintly on the hardwood floor. I unlocked the bottom drawer, my fingers tracing the cool metal, and pulled out a thick manila envelope. Mom had given it to me 2 years ago, just months before her unexpected death, her frail hands gripping mine, her eyes filled with an intensity one hadn't fully understood then. "Don't open this until after your father's gone," she had said, her voice a whispered command. "Promise me, Alexandra." I had promised, of course, the weight of her plea settling deep in my heart. And now, as I carefully peeled back the flap, my fingers trembling slightly, I finally understood why. Inside were documents, a lot of them, neatly organized, a testament to Mom's meticulous nature. At the top was a letter in Mom's elegant handwriting. "My dearest Alexandra, if you're reading this, then your father is gone, and I'm sure he's done exactly what I feared. Your father was a brilliant businessman, but he never understood what truly mattered. He let his pride and his outdated beliefs blind him to the most valuable thing he had, a daughter with vision, with integrity, with the heart to change the world. What he also never realized is that while he was building Morgan Communications, I was building something of my own. 20 years ago, I began investing in sustainable technology companies. Your research on marine conservation inspired me. While your father dismissed your work as youthful idealism, I saw the future. These holdings have grown considerably, worth far more than Morgan Communications. Everything is in your name, transferred slowly and legally over the years through a network of investments your father never thought to question. Jessica can't touch a cent of it. Use it wisely, my darling girl. Make the difference I always knew you could. All my love, Mom." My hands trembled as I sifted through the documents, stock certificates, investment portfolios, offshore accounts. It was an empire, quietly built under my father's nose. He'd never had a clue. The sheer scale of it made my head spin, a dizzying blend of shock, awe, and a fierce, burning pride. It felt like Mom was still here, whispering encouragement, her quiet strength guiding me. My phone buzzed, another text from Jessica. "Seriously, Lexi, we need to talk about arrangements. Dad would have wanted us to work together." I picked up my phone, my pulse steady this time, a quiet confidence settling deep within. "You're right," I replied. "We should talk. Why don't you come over tomorrow morning? I have something to show you." That night, I stayed up late poring over Mom's documents, marveling at her brilliance. She had invested in wind farms, solar technology, ocean cleanup initiatives. Everything I had dedicated my career to. While Dad had dismissed my work as idealistic nonsense, Mom had been quietly securing the future. I thought about Jessica's smug expression in the lawyer's office, the way she'd always sided with Dad, always belittled my choices. Tomorrow, she would finally see the truth. At exactly 10 a.m., the doorbell rang. Jessica stood on my doorstep in another designer outfit, her expression a calculated blend of concern and superiority. Her eyes flicked over my home, barely concealing her disdain, a flash of judgment that didn't go unnoticed. "Oh, Lexi," she sighed, stepping inside. "We really need to talk about getting you set up properly. This isn't the kind of place a Morgan should be living in." I ignored her, a small smile playing on my lips, and led her to the dining room. "You're right, Jess. We do need to talk. There's something Mom wanted you to see." Her expression hardened slightly at the mention of Mom. They had never been close. Jessica was Dad's daughter through and through, a mirror image of his ambition and narrow worldview. "What are you talking about?" she asked, a wary tone creeping into her voice. I gestured to the documents laid out on the table, a veritable feast of financial power. Jessica's manicured fingers hesitated before reaching for the papers, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face. I watched as her smirk slowly faded, replaced by disbelief, then a growing horror. Her hands began to shake, her face drained of color, then flushed red with a sudden, furious anger. This can't be real," she stammered, her voice thin and reedy. "Mom was just a housewife. She didn't know anything about business." I almost laughed aloud. Mom had spent years playing the role of the quiet, supportive wife, letting Dad and Jessica talk business, while she built something bigger than either of them had ever imagined. This reveal wasn't just a financial shock. It was a profound psychological unmasking. My mother, in her quiet, strategic brilliance, had navigated the power paradox of her marriage, creating significant wealth and influence while being systematically underestimated. This demonstrates how individuals in seemingly subservient roles can wield immense, often invisible, power through long-term planning and the strategic avoidance of direct confrontation. Jessica's shock stemmed not just from the loss of control, but from the shattering of her carefully constructed reality about her mother's capabilities. It was a perfect, silent coup. "Oh, it's real," I said, my voice steady, filled with a calm authority I rarely allowed myself to display. "Every document is verified. Mom knew exactly what she was doing. And now, so do I." Jessica sank into a chair, her perfect posture faltering, her shoulders slumping. But Dad's company, Morgan Communications, is yours. I finished for her, just like Dad wanted. But Mom's legacy, that belongs to me. And it's worth about 10 times what you inherited." Silence stretched between us, broken only by the soft tapping of Jessica's nails against the table. I watched her, fascinated. She was recalibrating, strategizing, trying to find her footing in this new, terrifying reality. Finally, she spoke, slipping into the smooth, persuasive tone she used in boardrooms. "We could work together. Pool our resources. Think about it, Lexi, with Morgan Communications infrastructure and these assets." "No, Jess," I cut her off, my voice firm. "That's not what Mom wanted, and it's not what I want. You got exactly what Dad intended for you. This is my path." Her mask slipped, just for a second, revealing something raw beneath, anger, maybe even fear. But she recovered quickly, standing abruptly, her heels clicking against the floor. "You're making a mistake," she said coolly, her voice regaining its icy edge. I smiled. "Maybe, but at least it's mine to make." Jessica stormed out, her expensive heels striking the pavement with every furious step. I exhaled, feeling lighter than I had in years. Mom had been right. Success isn't always loud. Sometimes the quietest players make the biggest moves. I had work to do because this wasn't just about wealth. It was about impact. And now I had the resources to make it happen. My phone buzzed one last time. "Jessica, this isn't over, Lexi." I glanced at the locked safe in my office, where copies of every document were stored. I thought of my lawyer, already making arrangements to secure Mom's legacy. I smiled as I typed my response. "You're right. It's just beginning." The morning after Jessica's world-shattering visit, I woke up to 14 missed calls and a flood of texts from relatives. Word had spread quickly. Jessica had made sure of that. "Alexandra, this is Aunt Patricia. How could you do this to your sister? Your father would be devastated. Cousin Michael here. Let's talk business. I have some great investment opportunities." "Hey, cuz. Remember when we used to play together as kids? We should catch up." I sighed, muting my phone. Mom had always taught me the value of boundaries, and today I had no time for manufactured family drama. There was work to do. My first stop was Harrison and Associates, the law firm that had quietly managed Mom's empire for years. Unlike Caldwell, Dad's pompous corporate attorney, Sarah Harrison was sharp, modern, and unshakable. Right on schedule, Sarah said as I stepped into her sleek office, a knowing glint in her eyes. Your mother predicted Jessica would try to contest this within days of finding out. I settled into the chair across from her desk, the leather cool against my skin. What's our next move? Sarah pulled out a thick folder, her lips curving slightly. Your mother left very specific instructions. She knew Jessica would try to challenge the holdings, likely claiming your mother was mentally unfit when she made these arrangements. I scoffed. That sounds exactly like Jessica. Which is why your mother built an airtight case. Sarah's eyes gleamed as she slid a stack of documents toward me. She spent years documenting everything. Business meetings, investment decisions, even recordings of conversations with financial advisors. It's all here. Your mother wasn't just running an empire. She was playing the long game. A slow, admiring smile spread across my face. Mom had been 10 steps ahead of everyone. And there's more, Sarah continued, pulling out another document. Your mother also left instructions regarding Morgan Communications. She suspected your father's company might try to obstruct some of her environmental initiatives, so she put certain measures in place. As Sarah laid out the details, I felt something settle in my chest. Not just relief, but a profound clarity. Mom hadn't just left me wealth, she had left me a strategy. My next stop was the University Laboratory of Dr. James Chan, one of the leading researchers in ocean pollution prevention. Mom's files had revealed that she'd been anonymously funding his work for years. The lab was nothing like Morgan Communications' sleek, glass-walled offices. No marble floors, no expensive art. Just linoleum tiles, cluttered workbenches, and scientific posters. It felt more like home than Dad's world ever had. Dr. Chan's eyes widened as I introduced myself. Your mother was our anonymous benefactor? We've been trying to thank her for years. She believed in your work, I said, placing a contract on his desk. And I want to increase the funding. It's time to take this research to the next level. As we discussed expansion plans, my phone kept buzzing, Jessica this time, via email. You can't just walk away from family responsibility. Dad built this legacy for both of us. I stared at the words, thinking about Dad's legacy, ruthless business tactics, environmental negligence, manipulation. Then I thought about Mom's sustainable innovation, careful planning, quiet strength. The choice was obvious. That evening, as I pulled into my driveway, I spotted Jessica's Mercedes parked in front of my house. She was sitting on my porch steps, her perfect hair slightly disheveled, her expression unreadable. She stood as I approached. We need to talk. Really talk, Lexi. I unlocked my door, letting her follow me inside. Unlike yesterday, she didn't comment on my house or my furniture. I spoke to the board at Morgan Communications today, she began, pacing my living room, her movements agitated. Our stock dropped when news got out about Mom's sustainable technology holdings. Investors are nervous. I leaned against the arm of my couch, arms crossed. Sounds like a you problem. Jessica whirled to face me, her eyes flashing. It's an us problem, she snapped. This is our family's reputation we're talking about. Do you have any idea what people are saying? That Dad was so obsessed with grooming me for leadership that he missed Mom building something bigger right under his nose? They're calling him short-sighted, outdated. They're not wrong. Jessica stopped pacing, her face flushing. How can you be so cold? This is Dad we're talking about. Yes, the same Dad who cut me out of his will because I refused to follow his blueprint. The same Dad who mocked my work, dismissed my choices. I met her gaze steadily. The same Dad who taught you to do the same. Jessica flinched. I never, but she didn't finish because we both knew the truth. She had laughed right alongside him when he called my research a waste of time, when he sneered at Mom's idealistic nonsense. Sit down, Jess, I said softly, gesturing to the couch. Let me show you something. I opened my laptop and pulled up a presentation I'd been working on. These are projections for the next 10 years. climate change impact on coastal businesses, environmental regulation trends, sustainable technology market growth. I clicked through the slides, letting the data speak for itself. Dad's business model is dying. Mom saw it coming years ago. Jessica leaned in, her business mind still sharp. Morgan Communications could adapt, she said slowly, with the right partnerships. You mean with my money? I corrected. With your investment, she countered. Think about it, Lexi. We could honor both our parents' legacies. Merge them. Modernize Dad's approach, while you remain in control. I asked, raising an eyebrow. That's not happening, Jess. I'm done living in your shadow, trying to prove I'm worthy of the Morgan name. Her expression tightened. Is that what this is about? Revenge. I shut my laptop, the click final. No. It's about finally doing things my way. Mom gave me that freedom. Jessica didn't answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet, almost vulnerable. I don't know how to do this without you, Lexi. Dad always said we were stronger together. Dad said a lot of things. I held her gaze. But he was wrong about most of them. After she left, I poured myself a glass of wine and stepped onto the back porch. The evening air smelled like autumn, crisp, fresh, full of change. I pulled out my phone and opened the email I'd been drafting all day. Dear Morgan Communications Board of Directors, my name is Alexandra Morgan, and I'm writing to address the recent revelations about my mother's sustainable technology holdings. It was time to make my own moves. Jessica was right about one thing. This was just the beginning. The next morning, another storm arrived, in the form of Uncle Robert, Dad's younger brother. A Morgan Communications board member, he showed up unannounced at my door. Your father would be turning in his grave, he declared, skipping a greeting, his face red. Letting Morgan Communications stock price take a hit like this. I let him rant, barely listening. He'd always been Dad's echo, rolling his eyes at my tree-hugger nonsense at family dinners. Are you finished? I asked when he finally paused for breath. Alexandra, be reasonable, he said, switching tactics, his voice softening, attempting a patronizing tone. The family name is exactly what I'm protecting. I folded my arms, my gaze firm. While you and Dad clung to outdated business practices, Mom was building something sustainable, something future-proof. His face reddened again. Your mother didn't understand business. She was just the woman who outmaneuvered all of you. I offered. The one who built a billion-dollar empire while you weren't paying attention. His mouth pressed into a hard line. You're making a mistake. No, I said evenly. I'm fixing yours. He left in a fury, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. I had a feeling future family gatherings were going to be very interesting, but I didn't have time to dwell on it. I had a meeting with a team of environmental scientists struggling to fund their coral reef restoration project. Thanks to Mom, I could help. As I drove, I thought about how much had changed in just a few days. Mom's gift wasn't just financial freedom, it was the power to make a real difference. My phone buzzed, another text from Jessica. Board meeting tomorrow. Last chance to work together on this. I smiled, thinking of the email I'd sent last night, the plans already in motion. Good luck with the meeting, I typed back. I have other commitments. It was time to create my own legacy. The morning of Morgan Communications board meeting arrived with unexpected news. Their stock had plunged another 15% in pre-market trading. My phone buzzed with a headline from the Wall Street Journal. Morgan Communications faces investor exodus amid sustainability crisis. I was in my home office, reviewing research proposals, when Jessica burst in, still in her boardroom attire. Her perfectly tailored suit did nothing to hide the fury in her eyes, the raw anger distorting her face. What did you do? She demanded, slamming a stack of papers onto my desk. Half our major investors are threatening to pull out. I glanced at the printouts. Emails from Morgan Communications' largest institutional investors, concerns over environmental impact, questions about outdated business practices. warnings about market instability. I leaned back in my chair, a small, knowing smile playing on my lips. Funny how transparency works, isn't it? Jessica's voice sharpened. Transparency? You sent environmental impact reports to our investors? Reports that your research helped compile, not mine. I corrected. Those reports came from independent environmental agencies. I just made sure the right people saw them. Jessica dropped into a chair, her composure fracturing, her shoulders slumping. The board is in panic mode. They're talking about emergency measures, maybe even selling off divisions just to stay afloat. I nodded. They'd be worried. Moms. Companies are announcing major sustainability initiatives tomorrow. Breakthrough tech that makes Morgan Communications look like a fossil. Jessica exhaled sharply, a hiss of frustrated air. You're destroying everything Dad built. I met her gaze, my voice cold, just like Dad's had always been. No, Jess. Dad destroyed it himself by refusing to adapt. Mom warned him for years about sustainability and modernization. He ignored her. Jessica's fingers tightened into fists. And this is your revenge? This is business. My voice was cold, sharp. Isn't that what he taught us? The market evolves. Companies adapt or they die. Before Jessica could reply, my phone rang. Sarah Harrison. Turn on CNBC, she said, her voice urgent. Something's happening. I switched on the TV. Jessica watched, her face draining of color, as the breaking news ticker scrolled across the screen. Morgan Communications Board calls emergency session. CEO position under review. Jessica's breath hitched. They can't do this. Her voice was barely a whisper. I'm Dad's chosen successor. But they could. And they were. The news anchor was already dissecting the board's decision. How Jessica had failed to anticipate market shifts, how Morgan Communications was hemorrhaging investors, how the company had fallen behind on sustainability. Sarah's voice cut through the moment. The board is receiving another packet of documents. Your mother's reports detailing every mistake Morgan Communications made, and exactly how they could have adapted. Jessica turned back to me, realization dawning, a slow, dawning horror. You planned this. I shook my head. Wrong again, Jess. I don't want Dad's company. But I do want the world to see why his way of doing business doesn't work anymore. My phone buzzed again, an email from Dr. Chan. His team had breakthrough results on the ocean cleanup project. You should get back to your meeting, I said, standing. Sounds like they have a lot to discuss. Jessica rose slowly, squaring her shoulders, a flicker of her old defiance returning. This isn't over, Alexandra. I gave her a knowing smile. Actually, it is. Mom made sure of that. That afternoon, I drove to the university to meet Dr. Chan and his team. The lab was buzzing with excitement, a vibrant energy that felt like hope. This could revolutionize ocean cleanup efforts. Dr. Chan explained, showing me the data, his eyes bright with passion. And with the funding you've provided, we can scale it globally. I thought about Dad, his disdain for environmental efforts, his obsession with short-term profits over long-term impact. Mom had seen a different future. Now I was the one making it a reality. That evening, Sarah called again. The board meeting just ended, she said. Jessica's been removed as CEO. I exhaled slowly, letting the weight of it settle, a quiet victory. They're bringing in an interim leader while they reassess the company's direction. I already knew Jessica wouldn't take it well. How's she handling it? Sarah hesitated. She's threatening legal action, claiming family rights to the position. Let her, I said, a slight smile touching my lips. The shareholders won't support her, not after today. Sarah sighed. There's more. Some board members are suggesting a merger with your mother's companies. They think it's the only way to save Morgan Communications. I almost laughed. Dad's company, begging for salvation from the very environmental initiatives he mocked. Not interested, Sarah sounded unsurprised. That's what I thought you'd say. After hanging up, I opened my laptop, reviewing the final details for tomorrow's press conference. Mom's legacy was alive, thriving, just as she had planned. My phone buzzed again. Uncle Robert. His text was brief. The family name, Alexandra. Think about what you're doing to the family name. I thought about Mom, quietly building something meaningful while Dad and Jessica chased profits and power. I thought about the years of being dismissed, belittled, made to feel like I didn't belong. I glanced at Uncle Robert's text again. The family name, Alexandra. Think about what you're doing to the family name. I let out a slow breath, then typed my response. I am thinking about the family name. I'm giving it a future. That night, as I went over my speech for tomorrow's press conference, I found an old photo album tucked away in my desk drawer. The first photo, Mom, at my college graduation, beaming with pride as I accepted my marine biology degree. Dad and Jessica hadn't been there. They had a business meeting. Another picture, Mom in her garden, kneeling in the soil, teaching me about ecosystems when I was little. She had always nurtured my curiosity, encouraged my need to protect the environment, even when the rest of the family laughed at it. And now I understood. She had been playing the long game all along, preparing me for this moment. My phone buzzed again, a news alert. Morgan Communications stock hits 5-year low amid leadership crisis. I closed the article and opened my email instead. Dr. Chan's final presentation was waiting for review. Tomorrow, we would introduce the world to a different way of doing business, one that valued sustainability over greed, innovation over stagnation. Jessica might still be clinging to Dad's company, but I had something better. Mom's vision for the future and the power to make it real. This wasn't just the next chapter of my life. It was the next chapter of the Morgan legacy. And this time it would be written on my terms. Another text interrupted my thoughts. Jessica, they're destroying everything Dad built. Please, Lexi, help me fix this. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Some things aren't meant to be fixed, Jess. They're meant to be transformed. 1 year after Mom's revelations changed everything, I stood at a podium overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Behind me, the first of our large-scale ocean cleanup systems was launching, a dream I'd carried since graduate school, now made real through Mom's legacy. I took a steadying breath, the salty air invigorating my lungs, then addressed the crowd of reporters, scientists, and investors gathered before me. Today isn't just an environmental victory, I announced, my voice clear and strong. It's proof that business and responsibility aren't opposing forces. Success isn't measured by quarterly profits alone, but by the legacy we leave for future generations. As I scanned the audience, my eyes landed on Jessica. She sat in the back row, quieter than I'd ever seen her, less polished, more human. Morgan Communications had undergone a complete transformation over the past year, but not in the way Jessica had once envisioned. After her removal as CEO, the board had made the unthinkable decision to dismantle the company. Its divisions were sold off to organizations with stronger environmental ethics. The Morgan name, once synonymous with corporate power, had taken on a new meaning. When my speech ended and the cleanup system hummed to life, a quiet, powerful hum, Jessica approached the podium. "Nice speech," she said, her voice softer, stripped of its usual edge. Mom would have been proud. I studied her carefully, searching her eyes. No resentment, no defensiveness. "How are you, Jess?" "Really?" She hesitated, then offered a small, wry smile. "Surviving. It's different, not being Jessica Morgan, CEO. But maybe that's not entirely bad." We walked along the shoreline, watching the cleanup system in action. The technology was already showing promising results in early trials. After a long silence, Jessica spoke. "You know what I realized? I spent so many years trying to be exactly what Dad wanted that I never stopped to think about what I wanted." I turned to her. "And what do you want?" She exhaled slowly, watching the waves crash against the shore. I've been volunteering at a marine education center, teaching kids about ocean conservation. It's kind of amazing seeing their faces light up when they understand something new. A genuine smile broke across my face. Mom would have loved that. Yeah, Jessica murmured, a faint sadness in her voice. She would have. Later that afternoon, Sarah Harrison arrived at my office with the latest reports. Mom's companies had tripled in value, but more importantly, our environmental initiatives were making a measurable impact. There's something else, Sarah said, sliding an envelope onto my desk. We found this in your mother's old files. She left instructions for it to be delivered today. I unfolded the letter, my breath catching at the sight of Mom's familiar handwriting. My dearest Alexandra, if you're reading this, a year has passed since you learned about your inheritance. I hope you've used this time wisely, and from what I arranged to have monitored, I believe you have. But there's one last thing I need you to understand. Your sister, despite everything, is still your sister. Jessica was just as much a victim of your father's rigid worldview as you were. She simply coped differently. Now that his influence is gone, she might surprise you. I've left instructions with Sarah for a separate fund, one dedicated to environmental education initiatives. If Jessica has shown any sign of change, any willingness to see the world differently, I want you to offer her the chance to manage it. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't in defeating our enemies, but in helping them become better people. All my love, Mom. I sat back in my chair, absorbing Mom's final lesson. Even now, she was teaching me not about strategy or business, but about grace and wisdom. That evening, I invited Jessica over for dinner. As we sat on the back porch, autumn air crisp around us, I told her about Mom's letter and the education fund. You don't have to decide right away, I said carefully, watching her expression. But if you're serious about the marine education work, Jessica cut me off, her eyes wide. Why would you trust me with this? After everything I did, I thought about Mom's words. Because sometimes people deserve a chance to rewrite their story. Jessica swallowed hard, blinking away unexpected tears. I was awful to you for years. I helped Dad tear you down because it made me feel more secure about my own place in his world. I know, I said simply. But that's not who you have to be anymore. Over the next few months, Jessica threw herself into the work. She attacked the challenge of building education programs with the same intensity she once used for corporate takeovers. It was strange at first, working together instead of against each other, but Mom had been right. People could change if given the chance. The final piece fell into place on what would have been Mom's birthday. Jessica and I stood in her garden, the one I had maintained all these years, the air fragrant with late-blooming roses. Jessica touched a rose bush gently. Mom used to try to get me interested in gardening when we were kids. She'd talk about ecosystems and balance in nature. I never listened. I was too busy memorizing Dad's business lessons. I smiled. She never gave up hope, though. Not for either of us. Jessica turned to me, her eyes serious, a vulnerability I'd never seen before. I'm sorry, Lexi. Everything. I was so focused on being Dad's daughter that I forgot how to be Mom's too. For the first time in years, I pulled my sister into a hug. Mom knew what she was doing, I whispered. She saved both of us, just in different ways. That night, I sat in my office reviewing the latest reports from our ocean cleanup projects. On my wall hung 2 photos, one of Mom in her garden, kneeling in the dirt, teaching me about nature, and a new one, Jessica, teaching a group of children about marine conservation, her face alight with genuine joy. Mom's legacy wasn't just about money or companies. It was about transformation of the environment, our family, and ourselves. She had played the longest game of all, ensuring not just financial success, but the possibility of healing and growth. My phone buzzed, a text from Jessica. Kids asked about adding a hands-on marine biology program. Thought you might want to help design it. I smiled, thinking about Mom's final letter. Count me in, I replied, the words of promise. Because sometimes the best kind of victory isn't about winning or losing. It's about changing the game entirely. Mom had understood that all along, and now, finally, so did we. In the complex tapestry of family and legacy, how do we discern true worth from superficial success, and when is extending a hand to a broken past the most powerful act of all?